Archaic Records.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Archaic Records here with you again. My name is Jamie, coming to you from Nashville, Tennessee. And as you can see, Marina is once again in the house with us today. You got to be in the house when you're talking about one of your favorite bands of all time. Marina has brought with her her good friend Scratch, who is so excited about this record that she's been breathing heavily ever since. So if you can hear her in the background on this video, it's just because she is so excited about this new record by American ragtime cabaret hobo-punksters, the Bridge City Sinners. Now, this is the band's latest record. It just came out a couple weeks ago. It is out on Flail Records. And this is the vinyl that Marina pre-ordered. We just got it in a couple days ago. It features some really beautiful sort of marble green vinyl. Very well done, very high quality. In terms of this nice lyric sheet, including a frameable poster of the band's lead singer. Now, I have to be, in the spirit of full transparency, which is always the case here on Archaic Records, this is not my area of expertise, which is why Marina is in the house today to help us. Not only is this one of her favorite bands of all time, this is one of her favorite styles of music of all time. So without any further ado, let me bring in Marina. And for people who are unfamiliar with the Bridge City Sinners, why don't you tell people who they are, how you discovered them, and a little bit of your fan origin story.
Yeah, the Bridge City Sinners, I guess, I'm going to mess up how long they've been around for. I don't know exactly how long they've been around for, but I first found out about them about 5 years ago when they recorded on the Bridge City Sessions. They recorded for their first album a couple songs, and I remember, it came up on my algorithm, and at the time, it was, and still is, very unique and new, and they were using instruments you're not normally hearing. Kind of a jazz, folk, street music influence. And they just have this raw energy that you can't help but gravitate towards. And since then, I've kind of been locked in, and it's cool to see how they've progressed. I feel like this is their third or fourth album. Don't quote me on that, because I think their first album, I think it was EP first, and then, I don't know. I'm going to mess that up. But, so yeah, I've been a fan for like about 5 or 6 years now. They're great. It's been really cool to see how they've grown.
Sort of interesting, too, that this is kind of one of the directions that punk rock has gone. This is something that you and I have talked about before. This has become bands like the Bridge City Sinners and the Lost Dog Street Band and, Littlefoot and people like that. This has really become kind of like another, subgenre of the punk world. Now, I don't want to this is a band that's very hard for me to sort of categorize because I'm not an expert on this style of music, but it's interesting that punk rock has kind of gone in this sort of direction. I mean, this is like almost like cabaret ragtime punk.
Yeah. I feel like they're I imagine, from what I understand, a lot of the members of the Bridge City Sinners are street performers, have been street performers. And so I feel like part of that culture is a big part of their music and their influence. We'll talk about it when we get into the album, but you can definitely hear the New Orleans influence, which is obviously huge for, vagabonds and street performers. So
yeah, I've lived in New Orleans for 2 years of my life, and I will tell you that although living in New Orleans wasn't the greatest experience for me personally, when I listened to this record, we listened to this record last night. When I listened to this record, I was really kind of like thrown back to walking through the streets of the French Quarter at night and stuff like that. So it has a real authentic, this band is from the West Coast, which I'm sure they've spent a ton of time in New Orleans, but it has a real kind of, authentic kind of like New Orleans sound, at least to my kind of amateur ear. Last summer, Marina and I went to our annual pilgrimage to the Muddy Roots Festival out here in Cookeville, Tennessee, where you actually got a chance to see the band live for the first time. It wasn't supposed to be the first time, but
yeah, the year before that, they were supposed to play, but it was just like deep in the pandemic. I think maybe somebody caught COVID, something like that. They had to cancel their whole tour. It's a crappy year, So but last year was great because not only did the band play, a lot of the members had their own solo sets.
Most of the members play individual solo sets at Muddy Roots too.
And Lightning Luke played with basically every band at Muddy Roots.
I think we saw him literally 20 times.
Yeah.
But they were good live. Again, this isn't necessarily my luggage when it comes to, punk rock. But I would say for you, seeing them live was the highlight of your Muddy Roots weekend.
Yeah, it was great. It was really fun to see them.
Whereas my highlight was, the Dead Milkmen. That's sort of where her and I differ. Actually, the real highlight was me meeting Rodney Anonymous of the Dead Milkmen. But I couldn't help it, I was standing there minding my own business, and all of a sudden, out of my periphery, this little guy comes running up to me. He says, "Hey, aren't you Jamie Archaic? That guy that nobody watches on YouTube?" And I was like, "Yeah, man." He had me sign a bunch of shit. It was like kind of off-putting.
That
right?
was totally how that happened.
Come on, Rodney. Have some class, son.
Yeah, that's right.
Also, but we do have to plug, this band has a show coming up here in Nashville at Marathon Music Works in September. I think it's fairly safe to assume that we'll be there.
Yeah, I already bought tickets. They're opening for Frank Turner. This is our second round opening for him, so kind of cool. Yeah.
All right, so let's get into this record just a little bit. This record, as I mentioned, just came out
on the 12th, I think.
12th of July. It is out on Flail Records. For people who are unfamiliar with Flail Records, who are some of their, besides the Bridge City Sinners, who are some of their stable of artists?
I'm probably going to mess this up. So I think they have Larry and His Flask, The Holy Locusts, Rail Yard Ghosts, and I believe the bass player maybe runs this record label. They're based out of Portland. I think all the members kind of live elsewhere and then get together to record. I totally could have that wrong.
Isn't Littlefoot a Flail? Is he Flail artist?
I don't think so. No, I don't think he is.
My bad. Anyway, the first song on side one is a song called "Break the Chain."
Break the Chain, yeah. That one, I think that was the first single they released, and there's definitely a theme to this album, which we'll get into. But Break the Chain, I mean, at the end of the day, we don't really know what these songs are about, right? But I can say what I got from it, and for me, Breaking the Chain is, about breaking unhealthy habits or maybe some family dysfunction in your life, maybe those self-sabotaging cycles that we find ourselves in. That's what I got from it, and I loved it. Was a great way to start the album because it's high energy, it's fast, it's fun. In this album they have a horn section, which I loved, especially I feel like in the last album they didn't use as much horns and things like that, so this kind of brought me back to their first album. I think this was from the Blasting Company. They provided the kind of a lot of the background, and it's a great album. It's just, it gets your adrenaline going. It's fast. It kind of reminds me of Trampled by Turtles a little bit, like that kind of fast bluegrass kind of vibe.
Yeah, I mean, to me this song is, I think I agree with what you're saying. Like I always say this on this channel, and I'm just going to sort of reiterate what she says. When I talk about these songs, I'm not saying this is what it's about. This is kind of how I interpret it. One thing that you and I, we don't necessarily have a lot in common sometimes when it comes to our individual taste in music, but one thing I think I can say safely, and speaking for myself at least, I think you and I are both lyrics guys, and for me, the most strong connection I feel towards the artists that I love the most are the lyrics, and the lyrics of this song are really great. I agree with what you're saying. At least in my interpretation, the song is sort of about generational dysfunction, and it sort of makes me laugh. Marina and I do not have children. People always ask me, why don't you have children, Jamie? You should grow up and have children. It's like, have you seen the family I came from, son?
The dysfunction ends with us.
Yeah, I come from a long line of people that shouldn't have kids. I am doing the world a favor. But I agree. I like this song. It's got like a real kind of like throwbacky kind of vibe. The second song on this record is called Port Street Strut, which is just a real kind of brief instrumental interlude, which leads into the next song. Probably one of my favorite songs on this record, actually, which is Midnight Device.
Yes. These last two albums, I think, out of the whole album, have that New Orleans ragtime feel to it.
Yeah, like I said earlier, this reminds me of Walking Through the French Quarter.
Yeah, I think Lightning Luke also played the piano on this, which is cool. Like, the guy just does everything. This one...
Could you spare a little talent for the rest of us, son?
We just talk about music. We don't play it, Yeah, so, I mean, in my opinion, this one was... It seems kind of like it's about addiction and having a night out on the town. But you tell me, it seems like everybody has their vice, and every vice has its price, as they say in the lyrics.
Yeah, I think this song is kind of about that. I think it's about that everybody has a vice, no matter who they are. And, I don't know if it's necessarily always self-destructive. My personal vices have been somewhat self-destructive in the past. The next song after that is a song called Heavy, which is a song that I also liked on this record. isn't necessarily my favorite song on this album, but it was one of the ones I thought, as I was sort of taking notes. I have a hard time reading my own handwriting sometimes, but I was sort of taking notes on this song. I did mention that this was one that I liked also.
Yeah, this one also sounds the vibe. There's kind of the theme. The theme of this album to me, and it could just be where I'm at right now, because obviously we're going to project where we are in our lives. But to me, this album seems to be about struggling with inner demons and addiction and mental health, and we'll talk about it more. Well, actually, there you go. That'll lead into the next song, which is Doubt, which is literally about fighting with your own demons. Mm-hmm. And they released a music video for this, which was really cool. But this song to me, which I think kind of works with Heavy, is it's just about how we are our own worst enemies and how, we can be basically the meanest to ourselves. And sometimes we are the ones that are holding ourselves back just with our thoughts about ourselves. That's what I got from it.
Yeah, I think both these songs are relatively dark. To me, Heavy was a song that talks about, she talks about how heavy she feels when she wakes up in the morning, and basically her only sort of escape from that is when she goes to sleep at night. And that's something that, if you're somebody who's burdened with anxiety or depression, I think that's something that's very relatable. You wake up in the morning, and I've been through stretches of my life, you probably have too, when you wake up in the morning and the first thing you feel before your eyes even open is just that crushing weight of anxiety resting on your chest. And the song Doubt, which is this next song, I think these two songs flow really well into each other. I agree with what you're saying. I mean, this song, you read the lyrics of this song is just, it's just mean to herself. And I know that's something that I can personally relate to, is there's nobody in the world that's ever been meaner to me than I am. And right. I think that's sort of what I take away from the song. That's sort of like where I find this song to be relatable. Doubt, as I said, I like the song Heavy, but I think Doubt is, it's, again, I said this about Midnight Device, but I think Doubt is, based on my personal relationship to music, Doubt is probably the song on this record I relate to the most. Therefore, it's probably my favorite song.
Really nice. Yeah. Actually, I think it's in this song talking about Libby Lux, her vocal style, and how she really pushes the limits of her own vocal style with this album, but especially with the songs and different vocal techniques and things like that. It's cool to see her sing in different ways. And she's even talked about before, talking about this album, how she has kind of pushed herself. And vocally, I think this is her best album. The whole band sounds amazing, but I don't know if it's just the production, but I felt like the vocals especially were fantastic on this one. So.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I'm not an expert on this band. So we sat down last night and listened to this record start to finish together, and I tried to take some notes on it. But one thing, we're talking about her vocals, one thing I guess I hadn't noticed when we saw them live, I didn't know the songs as well as Marina does, but she uses this sort of affect on her voice, especially at the end of sentences, that I don't know that I've ever heard anybody ever use. It seems like the last song of every line, she really she enunciates it in a way like I've never heard before. She really kind of pushes out the last song on each sort of verse, and I don't know, it's just something I had never really heard before, and maybe it's something she's known for, maybe something she's always done, but I noticed it on this record that I hadn't noticed before. The next song after that is a song called The Crawl.
Once again, feel like going back to addiction, and it's a big, obviously, I can't say these people struggle with addiction, but I'm saying in my life, that's kind of, to me, what it's about. The Crawl and End of the War, to me. So The Crawl sounds, in my opinion, a lot like their last album that they just had. That one, and Spears and Blades, I thought was a great way to end side A if you are already a fan. The first couple songs I feel like were a little bit more of a departure, or maybe harkening back to like their first album. But if you liked their last one, Unholy Hymns, I felt like these last two on side A were probably the closest to that. So, well, no, Crazy too. Well, there's the whole middle part of the album really, but yeah.
All right, side 2 starts off with a song called Crazy, which is a song that I remember writing down that I really liked as well. To me, The Crawl and The End of the War are both good songs, but, and again, this is my ignorance, I admit it, but to me this those last two songs on side A, they kind of bleed together stylistically, and I like what they're talking about lyrically, but I like Crazy a lot better, the song that starts off side 2 of this record. Crazy is a song that sort of, she says, they say I'm crazy, and my mother was too. Is this sort of, again, is this kind of like another song, sort of like, Break the Chain, where it's kind of talking about generational dysfunction or generational...
I think it's all of the above. I think it has all of those elements: fighting with your demons, mental health, generational, I guess, curses that get passed down. This one, once again, this one definitely has that ragtime feel. I really love the guitar on this one. Even though the lyrics are really dark, there's something kind of fun about the fast-paced aspect of it.
Yeah, this is a fast record.
It is. Yeah. And so that's actually what I really love about the Bridge Sinners is, they use this kind of like old school jazz, ragtime, folk, bluegrass background, but then their lyrics hit really hard. The album is called In the Age of Doubt, right? So it's about, living in the times that we're living in. So I think it's great that they're touching on these things that a lot of us are feeling. It's just a weird time to be alive. Maybe everybody says that with where they are, but I think it's just very relatable, lyrics through and through. But
I feel like that's
but somehow you can make it fun.
Yeah, I feel like that's something humanity has in common. Every generation says, I would never break kids into this crazy world.
Yeah, we always have it the worst, but I really do feel like we have it the worst.
Pretty bad right now. All right, the next song after that is a song called Spears and Blades.
Yeah, I don't know. Somehow this song reminded me of like the Lost Boys from Peter Pan, which is not anything lyrically that they put in there. It just reminded me of that. But my favorite lyric, let's see here. Where is it? I just thought it was like it seems like it's kind of fun and about war. I don't know, man. That was a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a song that I do remember liking. I like where she says, this land will be bathed in fire and blood. Bleeding and burning in the battle's begun. I really like that lyric a lot. Until I sat down last night and I actually had to study this lyric sheet as I was listening to this record, which I always do whenever I listen to a new record. I always, maybe not the very first time I listened to it like I did with this one, but within the first couple times, because I am such a lyrics person, I like to read the lyrics because, like I said before, when you interpret these songs, it's hard. It's impossible to get inside the head of the writer and say this is, as a matter of fact, what it is, but how I interpret it. But I really do like her songwriting. I like her lyrics. Now, to me, musically, this record, there's a lot going on. It's a little bit, sometimes for me, it's a little bit chaotic. And I'm not comparing them to Gogo Bordello. I think this band's, I don't like Gogo Bordello. I think this band's way better than Gogo Bordello. But that's my same issue with Gogo Bordello. Sometimes it's just like, you're just getting hit by
just a wall of sound,
30 different things at the same time. It's hard to kind of decipher it, but I really like her records. This is actually the next song. Oh man, I said Doubt was probably my favorite song on the record, which I'll stick with that. But the next one is probably my second favorite, and that's Shame.
Yes, I agree. I love the first part of these lyrics. I'll just read them out. Memories fade but never cease, stains that grow and show on the face you wear day to day, days that darken into chains. Yeah, I hope we don't, but I for sure feel some shame. To me, this is just how time and shame and experiences add up and consume your thoughts and make you who you are. So, yeah, it's a heavy one. A lot of these are heavy, but yeah.
Yeah, this is one that is definitely relatable, at least in my personal experience. Shame is something that was heaped upon me as a young lad, and it's something that's hard to shake. It's something that once it gets inside of your, once it sort of gets inside of your blood, it's hard to get rid of. It's like when people talk about depression, just get over it. Cheer up, son. It's not really that easy. Shame is the same way for me. I think you and I know us well enough to know that you and I this is an issue that we both struggle with. The next song after that is a song called Sinner's Saloon. Yeah,
I think that's more of that fun New Orleans style.
Yeah, this is a real ragtime kind of
jam. Yeah,
I like this song. It's it's not necessarily one of my favorites on the record, but I do like it. I agree. It's got a real New Orleans. It's like I love New Orleans. Don't get me wrong. It's one of my favorite cities in the country, but I've lived there twice, and I've had a couple sort of lame experiences living there. So
it's a hard city to live in. I think people who live in New Orleans would probly say the same thing.
I think they wear it as a badge of honor.
Absolutely. If you live in New Orleans for a long time, if you're from New Orleans, like, you're tough.
Yeah, I think
wasn't tough enough to stay there. I can admit it.
People don't deny that it's a tough place to live.
Yeah.
But we did not have the greatest experience living in New Orleans. And, New Orleans is such a, romantic, beautiful place. You move there. Like, the first time I moved there, I had never even been there. And I got there and I was like, I'm never leaving. This is my home. This is the land of misfit toys. This is totally where my place is. And after a year, I went limping home with dried tears in the corner of my eyes. The next song after that is a song called Eye for an Eye.
Yeah, this one was fun, actually, and that's the thing I wanted to say about, I think it was Shame. There is a bit of a pop-punk kind of emo influence. I think that they're pretty big fans of Against Me, and a couple of the songs, I feel like they brought that into it, and I enjoyed that. That was cool. So I would say the melody of this one starts out almost like a pop-punk emo kind of mid-2000s kind of a vibe, which I was kind of happy and surprised to see that thrown in there. That was good. Yeah.
Yeah, I do know that the singers mentioned the fact that they are fans of Against Me. In the 2000s, I was sort of, I don't know, and I love 90s pop punk, obviously, Mr. T experience, but some of that 90s stuff I was a little bit too old for. And I'm not lumping these in, but, because Against Me was a little bit more authentic than bands like Good Charlotte and...
Yeah, we can't even compare.
But...
Listen, it's... He had to be there, but this is kind of my age range. I was in high school in the 2000s, so... Yeah, there was a big pop-punk influence, and like you said, some are more genuine than others, so... Yeah.
Newfound Glory?
Yeah, not my favorite, but, it's... Can't deny the influence on bands that are coming up. Yeah.
Okay. All right. The next song closes out the record. Basically, it's called The Good Ones.
This one was my favorite song. I think the lead singer, Libby, had mentioned, if you're familiar with the band, there's a song, Ashes, that's about loss and losing people. This is another one that's about that. And Jamie's talked about on the channel before about losing my brother a couple years ago. So this song hit really hard. If you've ever lost somebody... it's just all the thoughts that kind of go through your head of, why am I still around? Why is, she says at the beginning of the song, why is it always the good ones that die? Because that's what it feels like. So it definitely ends the album on a somber kind of grounding note. But I feel like that kind of leads into the epilogue really beautifully. And you kind of can finish the album just take a second to just kind of be alone with your thoughts and think and take everything in.
Yeah, I agree. I think The Good Ones is probably the best track to close out the album. Apart from there is like a little epilogue towards the very end, at the very end of the record. But The Good Ones is a very sobering song, as Marina just said. And, it's true. Also, what she says, that it seems like the good ones always die young, and people like Vince Neil live to be 90 years old. But it's true. It's very sombering. Marina and I, as we've talked about on this channel, as I have, and we went through a major loss a couple years ago, something that will probably neither one of us ever fully recover from. And you're not expected to recover from it. I don't think you're ever. But the way that she puts this song into lyrically, the way she sort of puts those feelings into words is actually quite beautiful. This is one of the most well-written songs on the record. Now, I would say Good Ones is probably my third favorite song on the record. I would say...
All right, well, hey, hold on. We'll do a top three. Top three songs on the album. Since we're
for me, number 3 is The Good Ones because I think it is the most well-written song lyrically on the record. It isn't necessarily... I don't like it as much musically as I do Shame and Heavy, but Shame for me is second. I love that song. It's very relatable to me. It's something that I struggle with in my daily life. And Heavy's probably my favorite song on this record.
Heavy's your favorite? Nice. I think 3 for me is probably Heavy, 2 is Break the Chain, and then 1 is The Good Ones for me. Easily.
Break the Chain is a very important song.
Yeah, it's a good one.
But
yeah. That one's probably going to be my number one song on Spotify Rap this year if I keep it up. So
yeah, is that the single?
I think this was the first single. I think they've already released a couple, but yeah, I think it was the first song they released on there. So,
but anyway, as a pretty diehard fan, I mean, where does this album rank?
It's my favorite album of theirs so far. Yeah, it's great. I think that they took a lot of the instruments that they had in like their first EP and their first album, and they brought them back, and they took some of the songwriting and the style choices from their second album, and it all just came together, and the production quality was amazing. You can tell they're all, what's cool about this band is they're all amazing musicians, and that was what was great, seeing them all at Muddy Roots. I mean, not Lightning Luke, is his name Clyde McGee, I think it's called? Please somebody mess it up. Okay. Yeah, and that guy can play the banjo like crazy. He's fast. Like, they're all just talented, so talented individually, and all of them coming together with their own influence and experience. Just, it's great.
Well, we talked about this last summer when we came back from Muddy Roots, and we did our Muddy Roots recap show, which hopefully we'll get to do again this year. But we went to go see King Strang live, who is
he's just
the
super
band's
fun.
guitar player.
Yeah, he's
and
great.
I remember, and this is me, but I saw him come out on stage. I was like, oh my God, look at this guy. King of the hipsters. But he blew me away, honestly. And you're absolutely right. I mean, every one of these members of this band, whether this is really your luggage or not, these are all incredibly musicians. I mean, Lightning Luke is somebody that, if he didn't have so much integrity, he would be playing on the biggest records in the world, I think. I think she's a great songwriter. And yeah, like you said, going and seeing all these members, seeing the band live at Muddy Roots was cool, but also going and watching them play their little small individual shows, I thought was pretty snug.
And I forget which song it was, but at the end of one of the songs, they had sort of a Quentin Tarantino 1970s guitar riff. I'm sorry, I don't remember which song it was. Just listen to the whole album. You'll thank us. That was great. I just really love how they mixed up the album, and you can tell they've all grown as musicians individually, and it's so cool to see a band like this come together.
Yeah, there's a lot of sound diversity on this record. Like you said, it goes from ragtime to, cabaret to goth to pop punk to like 70s Tarantino soundtrack.
Bluegrass, of course, because it's all I listen to.
And,
Poor Jamie.
Of course, it's got, it's almost, like I said, I mean, lyrically, this is a dark record. This isn't like necessarily a jaunt through the park, but I think it's a really good record. It actually surprises me, because like I've said, this was not, and is not really my luggage necessarily, but I would give this record pretty high praises. I really love the album cover. I didn't mention before, but I like the sort of antique cracked mirror. I showed the poster at the very beginning, but I think that this album cover is pretty snug, and I think this record generally is pretty snug for the most part. So
10 out of 10 for me, of course. But I'm biased. It's like my favorite band right now, so of course I'm going to love it. What'd you think?
I like it. I like it. It's, like I said, it's not necessarily my thing. This isn't something that I'm going to sprint back to tomorrow, but
as long as you're driving in my car, he'll probably be hearing it anyway.
I'll hear it. Anyway, thank you so much for checking out this video.
Thank you.
Be sure to go out and support your local record store. Check out the brand new record from Portland's Bridge City Sinners. I do not think you will be disappointed. Check back most weeks for Morrissey Monday, a weekly celebration of all things Morrissey and the Smiths, as well as other record content and album reviews throughout the week. And our good friend Scratch here wants to remind you that Chihuahuas are Satan's spawn. Anyway, until next time, my friends. Talk to you then.